The Galactic Council chamber stretched across 3 kilometers of polished crystal, its walls reflecting the bioluminescent glow of 1,000 different species. Ambassador Jack Thor of the Vraxian Empire stood before the assembly, his forearms gesturing dramatically as he addressed the gathered representatives. His voice carried the unmistakable tone of contempt. "And so the humans request membership in our council," he announced, his translator implant converting his clicking language into something the diverse crowd could understand. "These soft-skinned creatures from a backwater world called Earth. They have barely mastered faster-than-light travel. Their military consists of primitive kinetic weapons, and their biology is laughably fragile." A ripple of what might have been laughter passed through sections of the chamber. The Kryn delegation, towering insectoid warriors who had conquered 40 star systems, clicked their mandibles in amusement. The silicon-based Horthax, whose bodies could withstand the pressure of gas giants, vibrated with what their species considered humor. Commander Sarah Chen sat in the human delegation section, her jaw clenched tight enough to ache. Beside her, Captain Marcus Webb placed a gentle hand on her armrest, a silent reminder to stay calm. They had been warned this would happen. Earth's diplomats had prepared them for the ridicule, the dismissal, the casual cruelty of species who had been traveling the stars for millennia, while humans still thought they were alone in the universe. "Their planet is a death world by our standards," Jack Thor continued, warming to his subject. "Yet they consider it paradise. They require a precise mixture of gases to breathe, a narrow temperature range to survive, and they are so weak that their own planet's gravity causes their bodies to deteriorate over time. They sleep for 1/3 of their lives. They require constant sustenance, and a single microorganism can kill them." Sarah watched as the Galactic Council's supreme arbiter, a being of pure energy contained within a crystalline shell, remained silent. The arbiter was supposedly impartial, but even they seemed uninterested in defending humanity's application. "Furthermore," Jack Thor said, his voice rising, "they are a divided species. They have over 200 separate governmental entities on a single planet. They wage wars against their own kind over resources and ideology. They are emotional, irrational, and prone to self-destruction. I move that we deny their application and quarantine their system until they either evolve into something useful or destroy themselves. It would save us all considerable trouble." The motion received immediate support from a dozen delegations. Sarah felt her heart sink. 3 years of diplomacy, 3 years of proving Earth's worth, and it was all crumbling in minutes. Captain Webb leaned closer to her. "Remember the plan," he whispered. "Let them underestimate us." Before Sarah could respond, the chamber's attention shifted. A new presence had entered, and even the most arrogant species in the room fell silent. The Krell had arrived. The Krell were legends in the galaxy, ancient beyond measure. They had been exploring the cosmos when most current civilizations were still single-celled organisms. They rarely involved themselves in council matters, preferring to observe from their hidden worlds scattered across the universe. Their appearance was unsettling to most species, beings that seemed to exist partially outside normal space-time, their forms constantly shifting between states of matter and energy. 3 Krell representatives materialized at the center of the chamber, their presence causing the air itself to shimmer and warp. When they spoke, their voices seemed to come from everywhere and nowhere at once. "We have observed the humans," the lead Krell announced. "We have watched their progress for the past century of their time. We wish to speak on their application." Jack Thor's confident posture faltered slightly. "The Krell honor us with their presence, but surely even you must see that these humans are—" "Dangerous," the Krell interrupted. "That is what they are. More dangerous than any species currently represented in this council." A shocked silence fell over the chamber. Sarah felt her blood run cold. If even the ancient Krell thought humans were a threat, their application was finished. They would be quarantined, isolated, possibly even eliminated as a preventive measure. The Krell continued, their words measured and deliberate. "You mock their physical weakness, Jack Thor of Vrax. You laugh at their need for specific atmospheric conditions, their susceptibility to disease, their fractured political systems. But you fail to understand what these apparent weaknesses have created." The Krell's form pulsed with an unreadable energy pattern. The humans evolved on a world that tried to kill them every single day. Their planet experienced multiple extinction events. Ice ages that should have eliminated all complex life. Volcanic eruptions that blocked out their sun. Asteroid impacts that reset evolution itself. Diseases that killed millions. Predators that hunted them when they were still learning to walk upright. And yet they not only survived, they thrived. Sarah sat up straighter, hardly daring to hope. Around the chamber, species that had been openly mocking humanity moments before were now listening with unsettling intensity. You call them weak because they require oxygen, the Krell said, but they learned to hold their breath and dive deep into their oceans. You call them fragile because temperature extremes harm them. Yet they learned to survive everywhere from frozen wastelands to burning deserts. You mock their need for sleep. But this is when their brains process information and solve problems their conscious minds cannot. Their apparent weakness is a training ground that forged something far more dangerous than physical strength. The lead Krell turned its attention directly to Jack Thor. Tell me, Ambassador of Rax, when your people face a problem, what do you do? Jack Thor bristled at being addressed so directly. We apply our superior strength and technology to overcome it. And when that fails, it does not fail. We are Vraxian. We are among the strongest species in the galaxy. Exactly, the Krell said, and something in their tone made it sound like a condemnation. You rely on your natural advantages. The humans have no such luxury. When a human faces a problem they cannot solve with their body, they use their mind. When their mind is insufficient, they build tools. When their tools fail, they adapt and build better ones. When they face extinction, they do not simply fight harder. They change the very nature of the fight itself. The Krell gestured toward the human delegation. These beings taught themselves to fly despite having no wings. They went to their moon using nothing but chemical reactions and mathematics. They split the atom and harnessed its power. They created artificial intelligence and genetic engineering. They built weapons capable of destroying their entire planet, looked at what they had created and chose restraint. Every single challenge their world threw at them, they survived and adapted. But they fight among themselves, another council member objected. A crystalline being from the Prism Collective. They are barbaric and warlike. They are competitive, the Krell corrected. And that competition drives them to exceed every limitation. Yes, they fight each other, but they also cooperate on a scale that would be impossible for most species. They form alliances across genetic lines, cultural boundaries, and ideological differences when faced with common threats. They argue and debate and struggle to find consensus, and that process, messy as it is, produces solutions that no single tyrannical voice could ever achieve. The chamber had gone completely silent now. Sarah could feel every eye, sensor, and consciousness focused on the Krell's words. You want to know why humans are dangerous? The Krell asked, their voice carrying across the vast space. Because they refuse to accept defeat. Because their weakness forced them to become clever, adaptable, and relentless. Because they look at the impossible and see only a problem that has not yet been solved. Because they have spent their entire existence proving that strength is not measured in physical power alone. The Krell turned to address the entire council. We do not suggest you deny their application. We suggest you approve it immediately and hope that in doing so you gain their cooperation rather than their enmity. Because make no mistake, this species will either be your greatest ally or your worst nightmare. The choice before you today is simply which you prefer. With that, the Krell vanished as suddenly as they had appeared, leaving behind a chamber full of species who suddenly saw humans in a very different light. The vote was delayed for 3 standard galactic days while the council debated the Krell's unprecedented intervention. Sarah and Marcus spent that time in their assigned quarters on the council station, watching news feeds from across the galaxy and preparing for whatever came next. The reaction to the Krell's speech had been explosive. Some species were calling for immediate human integration, others demanded stricter quarantine protocols, and a few suggested preemptive strikes against Earth before humanity could become the threat the Krell described. Look at this one, Marcus said, pulling up a broadcast from the Thorian News Network. They're calling us the Death World species now. Apparently our survival rate for visiting aliens is being analyzed. Remember that Zentari botanist who came to study our plants? Dr. Clixon. What about her? She wrote a paper about how she nearly died 6 times during her 3-month visit. She was stung by a bee, caught influenza, had an allergic reaction to peanuts, got food poisoning from improperly stored seafood, twisted her ankle on uneven ground, and apparently our summer heat nearly caused her to have organ failure. Sarah couldn't help but laugh. We warned her about all of those things. Exactly. But now it's being shared across the galaxy as proof that Earth is essentially a hostile environment that somehow produced a sentient species. There are betting pools on how long it would take various council species to die if they visited Earth without environmental suits. Their communicators chimed simultaneously. The council was reconvening for the final vote. The chamber was even more crowded than before. It seemed every species wanted to witness what happened next. Sarah noticed something different in how other delegations looked at the humans now. The open mockery was gone, replaced by something harder to read. Curiosity, caution, fear. The Supreme Arbiter's crystalline form pulsed with light as they called the session to order. The Galactic Council will now vote on the human application for membership. Before we proceed, Ambassador Chen of Earth has requested permission to address this body. Does the Council grant this request? A tense moment passed. Then, surprisingly, Jack Thor himself spoke up. The Vraxians do not object. Let the humans speak for themselves. Sarah stood, her heart pounding. She had not expected to be given this opportunity. She walked to the central platform, acutely aware of her small stature compared to most species present, of how vulnerable her soft skin looked next to armored exoskeletons and crystalline bodies. Members of the Galactic Council, she began, her voice steady despite her nerves. I stand before you not to beg for acceptance but to offer you a partnership. The Krell honored us with their assessment, but I want you to understand something they did not say. We do not see our weaknesses as limitations. We see them as motivation. She pulled up a holographic display showing Earth. This is our world. By your standards, it is hostile and dangerous. By our standards, it is beautiful and precious. We learn to love it despite its dangers, or perhaps because of them. Every human child learns that the universe does not owe them safety, comfort, or survival. We learn that these things must be earned through effort, cooperation, and innovation. The display shifted to show images of human history. Ancient civilizations building monuments that still stood thousands of years later. Scientists working in laboratories. Engineers constructing spacecraft. Medical teams fighting diseases. Rescue workers pulling people from disasters. You see division in our many nations and cultures. We see diversity of thought and approach. Yes, we have fought wars. Terrible, devastating wars that taught us the true cost of conflict. But we also learned from them. We built international organizations to prevent future wars. We created laws to protect the innocent. We developed technology to solve problems rather than create them. Our divisions do not make us weak. They make us adaptable because we must constantly negotiate, compromise, and find common ground. A murmur ran through the crowd. Sarah pressed on. You worry that we are dangerous. You should, not because we are warlike or aggressive, but because we refuse to give up. When you have been traveling the stars for millions of years, when you have access to technology that seems like magic to us, what happens when you face a truly new problem? How long has it been since your species had to improvise, to scratch and claw for survival, to innovate or die? She saw some delegates shifting uncomfortably. We bring something to this council that many of you have not needed in millennia. We bring hunger, not for conquest or domination, but for knowledge, for growth, for advancement. We look at the stars and see infinite possibilities. We look at your technologies and think about how to improve them. We look at your problems and wonder if our different perspective might see solutions you have missed. The display changed again, showing recent human achievements. The colony ships being built in orbit around Mars. The quantum computers solving problems that would take conventional systems millennia to process. The medical advances extending human lifespans and curing diseases. We have been alone in the universe for our entire history. We developed faster than light travel not because we had anyone to trade with or learn from, but because we looked at the vast distances between stars and refused to accept that they were barriers. We did it with mathematics and engineering and the absolute certainty that nothing was truly impossible. Only difficult. Sarah's voice grew stronger. The Krell said we are dangerous. They are right. We are dangerous to stagnation. We are dangerous to the idea that problems cannot be solved. We are dangerous to the comfort of species who have forgotten what it means to struggle. But we are also loyal allies, creative partners, and determined friends. We offer the Galactic Council something precious. A reminder that intelligence is not just about knowledge, but about application. About taking what you have and making something more. She paused, letting her words sink in. You can reject our application. You can quarantine our system. You can try to contain us. But understand this. We survived ice ages and plagues and asteroid impacts. We survived predators that hunted us and disasters that should have ended us. We survived our own worst impulses and learned to be better. We will survive rejection too. We will continue to grow, to learn, to reach for the stars. The only question is whether you want us doing that as partners or as isolated unknowns at the edge of your territory. We are not asking you to trust us because we are strong. We are asking you to trust us because we understand weakness intimately, and we have spent our entire history turning it into strength. We know what it means to fall and get back up. We know what it means to fail and try again. We know what it means to be afraid and push forward anyway. These are not weaknesses. These are the foundations of resilience. Sarah gestured to Marcus and the rest of the human delegation. We are not perfect. We will make mistakes. We will stumble and struggle with customs and technologies that are new to us. But we will learn. We always learn. And perhaps in teaching us about the galaxy, you might learn something from us too. You might remember what it was like when your own species first looked up at the night sky and wondered what was out there. You might remember the hunger for discovery, the joy of solving impossible problems, the satisfaction of achieving what everyone said could not be done. The chamber was absolutely silent. Sarah took a deep breath. Vote however you choose, but know that humans will be watching, and we will remember who saw us as partners and who saw us as threats. We will remember who gave us a chance and who tried to hold us back. And when the day comes that you face a problem your ancient knowledge and powerful technology cannot solve, you will remember the species from the death world, the species that turned weakness into innovation, the species that looked at the impossible and got to work. She bowed slightly, a gesture of respect that needed no translation, and returned to her seat. Marcus squeezed her shoulder as she sat down, his eyes shining with pride. The Supreme Arbiter's light pulsed in a pattern Sarah had learned meant contemplation. Does any delegation wish to speak before the vote? Jack Thor rose to his feet, all four arms spread wide. Sarah braced herself for another attack, but what came instead shocked her to her core. The Vraxian Empire withdraws its objection to human membership. Ambassador Chen speaks with the voice of a true warrior. Her words carry the weight of truth. If her species possesses even a fraction of the determination she has displayed here today, then the Krell were correct. We would rather have humans as allies than as enemies. One by one, other objections were withdrawn. The Kryn warrior caste announced that they respected strength in all its forms. The Crystalline Prism Collective noted that different perspectives created more complete understanding. Even species that had never spoken in council sessions made their support known. Then we shall vote, the Supreme Arbiter declared, all in favor of granting humanity full membership in the Galactic Council. The chamber lit up with thousands of affirmative signals. When the count finished, the result was overwhelming. Humans were now an official part of the galactic community. As celebrations erupted in the human delegation section, Sarah allowed herself a small smile. They had done it. Earth had earned its place among the stars. But she knew this was just the beginning. Now came the hard part, proving that everything. 6 months after joining the Galactic Council, humanity's novelty had worn off for most species. The humans had established embassies on 12 different worlds, opened trade negotiations with 40 civilizations, and generally behaved like enthusiastic newcomers eager to learn everything about their galactic neighbors. Most council members found them curious but ultimately unremarkable. Just another species adding their voice to the cosmic chorus. Then the Devourers arrived. Dr. James Rodriguez was working late in the Human Science Directorate on Council Station when the first alarms sounded. As the director of xenobiology research, he had access to the station's sensor networks, and what they were showing him made no sense. A fleet of ships had just emerged from faster-than-light travel at the edge of the Tharsis system, home to over 4 billion Tharsi civilians. The ships were like nothing in the Council databases. Organic in appearance, they seemed to be grown rather than built, with surfaces that writhed and pulsed with disturbing life. There were hundreds of them, ranging from small fighter equivalents to massive capital ships that dwarfed anything in the Council fleet. James immediately contacted the Council Military Command Center. This is Dr. Rodriguez from the Human Directorate. Are you seeing these sensor readings from Tharsis? The Vraxian officer on duty clicked his mandibles in acknowledgement. We see them, human. Identification is in progress. Stand by. Standing by might not be an option. Those ships are moving into attack formation. Their energy signatures are off the charts. The Council has protocols for first contact situations. We will dispatch a diplomatic vessel to... The transmission cut off as every screen in James's laboratory suddenly displayed the same emergency broadcast. The Supreme Arbiter's crystalline form appeared, their usual calm demeanor replaced with something James had never seen before. Fear. All Council species are hereby placed on maximum alert. The Devourers have returned. All military forces report to your designated rally points. All civilian populations prepare for immediate evacuation. This is not a drill. The Devourers have returned. James felt his blood turn to ice. He had read about the Devourers in the restricted historical archives. 3,000 years ago they had swept through the galaxy like a plague, consuming entire worlds and leaving nothing but dead rocks in their wake. The Council had barely survived their last incursion, and only because the Krell had intervened with weapons that bent the laws of physics themselves. Even then, it had taken a century to drive the Devourers back into dark space. Now they were back, and the Krell had not been seen in Council space for over a millennium. Within minutes, James was in an emergency session with Earth's entire Council delegation. Admiral Patricia Okoye, commander of humanity's small contribution to the Council Defense Fleet, was explaining their situation. We have 12 ships in the Council fleet. 12. The Vraxians have thousands. The Kryn have hundreds of thousands. Our weapons are primitive by galactic standards. Our shields are barely adequate for normal space combat, and we are being asked to join a defensive line against an enemy that nearly destroyed galactic civilization. What are the Devourers? Asked Ambassador Chen, who had been promoted to lead ambassador after her speech 6 months earlier. Admiral Okoye pulled up a holographic display showing nightmare creatures. Bioengineered weapons, according to the archives. Someone or something created them millions of years ago as the ultimate weapon. They evolved beyond their creator's control and became a plague that consumes everything in their path. They eat entire planets, stripping them of all biological and mineral resources, then use that material to build more of themselves. They don't negotiate, they don't communicate, they just consume. How were they stopped before? They weren't, not really. The Krell drove them into hibernation in deep space. The Council has been monitoring the region where they disappeared. But apparently the Devourers found a different route back into inhabited space. Marcus Webb, now a captain in the Council Defense Force, brought up tactical data. First contact has occurred at Tharsis. The Council sent a diplomatic ship. The Devourers consumed it. They're now bombarding the planet with biological weapons. The population is being evacuated, but there are 4 billion Tharsi down there. The evacuation ships can maybe save a few million before the Devourers reach the surface. Sarah Chen stood up, her mind racing. What's our current response? The Council is assembling their fleets. Rally point is 3 light-years from Tharsis. They are planning a defensive line to protect the core worlds while evacuation proceeds. A defensive line, Sarah repeated slowly. They are going to abandon Tharsis. There's no choice. The numbers do not favor an assault. Council military doctrine emphasizes preservation of forces and strategic withdrawal when faced with overwhelming opposition. Sarah turned to Admiral Okoye. What would Earth do? If this was happening to Earth, what would we do? The Admiral was quiet for a long moment. We would fight. Even if we could not win, we would buy time for evacuations. We would make them pay for every inch of ground. We would hold the line until the last civilian was safe. Then that's what we do. Ambassador, with respect, 12 ships cannot hold against that fleet. We would be throwing away lives for no gain. No gain? Sarah's voice was sharp. There are 4 billion people on that planet. Every minute we buy them is thousands more saved. Millions more. And more than that, we show the galaxy what humans meant when we said we were dangerous to stagnation and comfortable with being uncomfortable. The Council is doing what their doctrine says, what their military theory dictates, what their logical, rational analysis concludes is the smart move. We are going to do what's right. James spoke up from his position at the science station. The Devourers are biological entities. I might be able to develop countermeasures if I can get samples, but I need time and data. How much time? Days, maybe a week. The archives have some information, but it is 3,000 years old. These Devourers have had millennia to evolve. Sarah looked around the room at her people. at the scientists who had left Earth to learn from alien civilizations, at the military officers who had sworn to protect humanity's interests, at the diplomats who had worked to build bridges across the stars. She saw fear in their eyes, but also determination. They were human. They knew about impossible odds. Send a message to Earth, tell them what is happening. Tell them we need every ship, every weapon, every scientist they can spare. Then get our fleet moving toward Tharsis. We are going to hold that line, and we are going to show the galaxy that humans keep their promises. We said we were resilient. We said we turned weakness into strength. We said we refused to accept defeat. Time to prove it. Admiral Okoye saluted. It will be done, though I should note that the Council will likely order us to fall back to the defensive line. Then we will politely decline their order. We are Council members, not Council subjects. Our military serves Earth first, and Earth does not abandon people to die when we can help them. Within the hour, Earth's 12 ships broke formation from the main Council fleet and set course for Tharsis. The move caused immediate chaos in the Council command structure. The Vraxian fleet commander contacted Admiral Okoye directly, his translator struggling to convey his agitation. Human fleet, you are moving in the wrong direction. The rally point is 3 light-years galactic north, not toward the enemy. We are aware of the rally point, Commander. We are choosing a different strategy. This is not a strategy, this is suicide. Return to formation immediately. Negative, Commander. We have 4 billion reasons to be exactly where we are going. Okoye out. The 12 human ships entered the Tharsis system expecting to face the Devourers alone. What they found instead surprised them all. The Tharsi had not given up. Their defense fleet, outdated and outgunned, was engaged in a desperate fighting retreat, trying to buy time for the evacuation ships. They were being slaughtered. Their ships burst like ripe fruit under Devourer bioweapons, their shields inadequate against the organic projectiles that seemed to eat through energy barriers like acid. All human ships. This is Admiral Okoye. We are moving to support the Tharsi fleet. Remember your training. Remember what we are fighting for. And remember that Earth is watching. Make them proud. The human ships dove into the battle with a ferocity that caught even the Devourers off guard. Human weapons might have been primitive by galactic standards, but they had been designed with one purpose: to kill efficiently. Nuclear-tipped missiles, railguns firing depleted uranium rounds, and laser arrays that could cut through armor plating tore into the Devourer swarm. More importantly, the humans fought differently. Council doctrine emphasized formation fighting and coordinated volleys. Human tactics were chaotic and unpredictable. Ships broke formation to pursue targets of opportunity. Captains made snap decisions based on instinct rather than waiting for orders. They used the debris field from destroyed ships as cover. They rammed Devourer fighters when they ran low on ammunition. They adapted and improvised with every passing second. The Devourers had evolved to fight the Council's methodical, predictable strategies. They had no answer for human creativity born from desperation. The battle for Tharsis raged for 11 hours. What began with 12 human ships and a desperate Tharsi defense fleet grew into a coalition of over 300 vessels from 40 different Council species. They held the line not through superior firepower or advanced technology, but through sheer determination and the kind of tactical improvisation that the Devourers had not encountered in 3,000 years. Dr. James Rodriguez worked frantically aboard the human research vessel Curiosity, analyzing samples collected from destroyed Devourer ships. His team had established a mobile laboratory in one of the safer orbital positions, protected by a screen of fighter craft while they raced to understand the enemy. The biological matrix is incredibly complex, James explained over the fleet-wide science channel, which now included researchers from a dozen species. These things are not natural evolution. They were designed, but not by any civilization I recognize. The genetic markers do not match anything in our databases. A Tharsi biologist, Dr. Velcro, added her analysis. We are seeing adaptive camouflage at the cellular level. The Devourers can modify their own biology in real time to counter whatever attacks them. Our energy weapons were effective initially, but the later waves have developed reflective proteins that dissipate the damage. Same with our kinetic weapons, confirmed a Vraxian weapons specialist. The armor is learning. Ships hit with railgun rounds in the first hour were destroyed. Now they are only damaged. The Devourers are evolving mid-battle. James felt a chill run down his spine. How fast are they adapting? Exponentially. If this continues, they will be immune to every weapon we have within 48 hours. The situation was worse than anyone had imagined. The Council fleet had firepower, but the Devourers had evolution on their side. Every attack taught them how to defend better. Every ship destroyed provided them with new genetic material to incorporate. They were learning from everything the Council threw at them. We need a weapon they cannot adapt to, James said, thinking out loud. Something so fundamentally different from their biology that evolution cannot compensate fast enough. What could possibly qualify? Asked Velcro. We have tried plasma, lasers, kinetics, radiation, chemical weapons, biological agents. They adapt to everything. James pulled up a restricted file from Earth's military archives, something he had hoped never to use. There's one option. We call it the Geneva Protocol weapon. Banned on Earth for over 2 centuries because it is too cruel even by our standards. What does it do? It attacks neural tissue specifically, not to damage it but to overstimulate it. Imagine every pain receptor in your body firing at once, every fear center in your brain activated simultaneously, every sense amplified beyond tolerance. The weapon does not kill quickly. It causes such intense suffering that the target's own body shuts down trying to escape the pain. The channel went silent. Finally, a Kryn warrior spoke. This is a weapon of torture, not war. Yes, we banned it because we decided some things were too terrible to use, even against enemies who deserved no mercy. But the Devourers are not a species. They are a weapon, and they are consuming entire worlds. How much mercy do they deserve? Admiral Okoye's voice cut through the debate. Dr. Rodriguez, can you build this weapon? And more importantly, will it work? The Devourers have nervous systems, extremely advanced ones, given their ability to coordinate swarm tactics. If we can deliver the neural agent, it should affect them. The question is whether they can adapt fast enough. How long to develop and deploy? 36 hours if everything goes perfectly. Maybe 48 more realistically. Then you have your authorization. Do what you need to do. We will buy you the time. James assembled a team of the best minds from the Allied fleet. Human neurologists worked alongside Tharsi biochemists, Vraxian molecular engineers, and Kryn weapons specialists. They worked in shifts around the clock, combining knowledge from dozens of scientific traditions to create something that had never existed before. Meanwhile, the battle continued to intensify. The Devourers were probing the defensive line, testing for weaknesses. They had stopped their direct assault on the planet, seemingly content to blockade the system while they built up their forces. Intelligence suggested the main Devourer fleet was still in transit, and when it arrived, no amount of courage would hold the line. Captain Marcus Webb commanded one of the human destroyers on the front line. His ship, the Resilience, had taken heavy damage in the first engagement, but remained operational. He watched his sensors as another wave of Devourer fighters approached. All hands battle stations. Incoming hostiles Vector 372. Weapons free. Make every shot count. The Resilience's guns opened fire, joined by a Kryn heavy fighter and 2 Vraxian corvettes. The Devourers came on in their typical swarm pattern, overwhelming through numbers rather than skill. But the Allied fleet had learned their tactics now and adapted accordingly. Target their formation nodes, Marcus ordered. The big ones in the center. Without them, the smaller ones lose coordination. It was a human observation that had changed the battle. The Devourers fought as a collective intelligence, with larger ships providing command and control. Destroy those ships and the swarm became confused and easier to handle. Other species had not noticed this pattern, because they fought in rigid formations themselves. Humans, used to more flexible tactics, had recognized the command structure within hours of engagement. The Devourers adapted quickly, though. Within a day, they had changed their formation patterns, distributing command functions across multiple ships. The Allied fleet adapted in turn, and so the deadly dance continued. Captain Webb, this is Admiral Okoye. Status report. Resilience is at 60% combat effectiveness. We have lost 2 forward batteries and our port shield generator is offline. Crew is holding up well considering. Can you hold your position for another 24 hours? Marcus looked at the tactical display showing the swarm of enemy contacts that seemed to grow with each passing hour. We will hold for as long as you need us to, Admiral. That is what humans do. Good. Because Dr. Rodriguez believes he has something. We are going to test it in 18 hours. If it works, we end this. If it does not, we fall back to the secondary line and regroup. Understood. Resilience will be here. As the hours ticked by, exhaustion began to set in across the fleet. Ships that had been in continuous combat for days were running low on ammunition and spare parts. Crews were working double shifts to keep weapons operational. Medical bays overflowed with casualties. The evacuation of Tharsis was complete, with all 4 billion civilians safely aboard transport ships. But now those transports needed protection during their journey to safer systems. In the laboratory, James put the finishing touches on what his team had created. The neural disruptor weapon was loaded into modified missiles that could penetrate Devourer bioarmor. Each missile contained enough agent to affect a sphere approximately 1 kilometer in diameter. They had produced 200 missiles, every one the combined fleet could carry given their current ammunition situation. "This is everything," James said during the final briefing with Admiral Okoye and the other fleet commanders. "If this fails, we have no backup plan. The agent is tailored specifically to the Devourer neural structure as we understand it. It should cause cascade failure in their nervous systems." Jack Thor, who had taken a leading role in coordinating the Allied fleet, asked the question everyone was thinking. Should? Human scientist we are betting our lives on should? "Welcome to human science," James replied with a tired smile. "We take educated guesses based on incomplete information and hope we are smart enough to get it right. It has worked for us so far." "Insane species," Jack Thor muttered, but there was something like respect in his voice. The attack was coordinated across the entire defensive line. Every ship carrying the neural disruptor missiles would fire simultaneously at predetermined targets throughout the Devourer fleet. The goal was to hit as many ships as possible before the Devourers could adapt or retreat. "All ships report ready status," Admiral Okoye commanded from her flagship. Around her, the bridge crew worked with quiet efficiency, the tension palpable in the air. This was humanity's contribution to the battle. If it failed, their credibility and possibly their place in the Council would fail with it. Targeting solutions locked. All missiles armed. Safeties disengaged. Fire. 200 missiles launched from Allied ships scattered across the battle space. They accelerated toward their targets at speeds that made them nearly impossible to intercept. The Devourers had learned to shoot down conventional missiles, but these were smaller and faster, designed with human aerospace engineering that prioritized speed over payload size. The first missile struck a Devourer capital ship amidships. For a moment, nothing seemed to happen. Then the ship began to writhe. Its organic hull rippled with convulsions as every nerve cluster fired at once. The smaller ships connected to it scattered in confusion as their command nodes stopped transmitting coherent orders. The victory at Tharsis changed everything. Within days, the entire Galactic Council knew the story of how humans and their allies had held the line against impossible odds. The neural disruptor weapon became the subject of intense debate. Some species hailed it as the salvation that would turn the tide against the Devourers. Others condemned it as barbaric and called for its prohibition under galactic law. Ambassador Sarah Chen found herself at the center of this debate during an emergency council session. The chamber was packed with representatives demanding answers, explanations, and, in some cases, access to the weapon that had proven so devastatingly effective. "The humans have created a weapon of mass suffering," declared the representative from the Luminary Collective, beings of pure thought who existed in crystalline matrices. "This violates every principle of ethical warfare established over millions of years of galactic civilization." Sarah stood to address the chamber, her small human frame somehow commanding attention in the vast space. "The Luminari are correct. The neural disruptor is a terrible weapon. It causes immense suffering. We know this because we banned similar weapons on Earth over 2 centuries ago. We decided as a species that some methods of killing were too cruel to justify, even against our worst enemies." "Then why did you create it now?" demanded the Luminari. "Because the Devourers do not negotiate. They do not surrender. They consume everything in their path. And because while we were debating ethical warfare, 4 billion Tharsi were hours away from being devoured alive. Ethics matter, but so do results. We chose to save lives at the cost of our own moral comfort." A Vraxian military commander stood, his forearms raised in a gesture of support. "The humans did what the rest of us were afraid to do. They made the hard choice. They carry the burden of that choice so that others may live. This is the essence of warrior honor." "Honor?" The Luminary's voice resonated with disbelief. There is no honor in torture. No, Sarah agreed quietly. There is not. But there is necessity, and there is sacrifice. We sacrificed a piece of our innocence to save others. Dr. Rodriguez, who created the weapon, has not slept properly since deploying it. He sees the writhing devourer ships every time he closes his eyes. That is the price we pay for doing what needed to be done, but he would do it again if it meant saving lives. The Supreme Arbiter's crystalline form pulsed with measured light. The Council must decide. Do we embrace this weapon as a tool against the devourers, or do we prohibit its use? Before anyone could answer, every screen in the chamber suddenly displayed an urgent alert. 3 more systems were under attack. The devourers had split their forces and were hitting multiple targets simultaneously. The attacks were coordinated and devastating. Initial reports indicated millions of casualties across all 3 systems. The debate ended instantly. The Council mobilized their forces, but they were spread thin, trying to protect hundreds of populated worlds across thousands of light years. The devourers had learned from Tharsis. They were no longer concentrating their forces. They were forcing the Council to make impossible choices about which worlds to defend and which to abandon. Earth's response was immediate. Every ship humanity could spare was dispatched to join the defense efforts. But 12 ships had become 30 with the recent arrivals from Earth, and even that was a drop in the ocean compared to what was needed. Humanity's military might was insignificant by galactic standards. What Earth could provide was something else entirely. Ideas. Captain Marcus Webb found himself in command of a task force that included human ships and volunteers from a dozen other species. His mission was to hit devourer supply lines and disrupt their coordination. It was a human strategy that most Council species had never considered. In traditional galactic warfare, you assembled your fleet, found the enemy fleet, and fought a decisive battle. You did not send small groups to harass and delay. The Council calls this guerrilla warfare, Jackthor said as he reviewed Marcus's proposed strategy. The Vraxian commander had volunteered to join the task force, intrigued by human military thinking. They say it is dishonorable. We call it asymmetric warfare, Marcus corrected. When you are weaker than your enemy, you do not fight them where they are strong. You find their weaknesses and exploit them. The devourers have numbers and adaptability, but they need to consume resources to grow and spread. We cut off their food supply and we buy time for evacuations and weapon development. You sound very confident for someone commanding only 42 ships against an enemy that numbers in the thousands. 42 ships can be in 42 places at once. We hit and run. We force them to chase us. We make them waste resources hunting us instead of consuming planets. We are not trying to win battles. We are trying to win time. The task force deployed in what the Council considered reckless fashion. They split into small groups, no more than 4 ships per unit, and began hitting devourer harvesting operations across a dozen systems. They would emerge from faster-than-light travel, launch their weapons at devourer resource collectors, and disappear before the main enemy forces could respond. The strategy worked beautifully. The devourers were forced to divert combat ships to protect their harvesters. This meant fewer ships available for assaulting populated worlds. It also meant the devourers started spreading themselves thinner, trying to cover more territory. Human tacticians shared their strategies with allied forces. Soon task forces from multiple species were conducting similar operations. The Kryn warriors took to the strategy with particular enthusiasm, treating it as a grand hunt. The Vraxians appreciated the efficiency of striking weak points rather than strong ones. Meanwhile, Dr. Rodriguez and his research team were working on a new problem. The neural disruptor had been effective at Tharsis, but intelligence indicated the devourers were already adapting. Newer ships showed resistance to the weapon. Some had developed redundant nervous systems that could shut down affected sections while maintaining function in others. They are learning faster than we anticipated, James explained during a secure video conference with Earth's top scientists. We need new approaches, different weapons that attack different vulnerabilities. A younger researcher, Dr. Sarah Kim from the Seoul Institute, proposed an unexpected solution. What if we stop trying to kill them? The devourers consume resources to reproduce. What if we poisoned their food supply? Explain, James said, intrigued. The devourers break down everything they consume at the molecular level and use it to build more of themselves. But their conversion process has to follow specific biochemical pathways. If we introduce molecules that look like useful resources but are actually toxic or disruptive to their biology, we could make entire planets indigestible or even harmful to consume. That is a long-term strategy. It would not help in active combat situations. No, but it would protect evacuated worlds and limit their expansion. Every planet we poison is one they cannot use. Eventually, they will run out of easily accessible resources. They will be forced to either leave our galaxy or slow their reproduction rate. James felt a surge of excitement. This was the kind of creative problem-solving that humans excelled at. While other species were focused on building bigger guns, humans were thinking about changing the fundamental nature of the battlefield. The poisoning strategy was implemented across hundreds of worlds that had been evacuated ahead of devourer advances. Special satellites were deployed that would seed the atmosphere and oceans with tailored molecules. To any sensor, the planets would look like perfectly good targets, but any devourer that tried to harvest them would find themselves consuming poison. The first confirmed success came 3 weeks later. A devourer harvesting fleet had attempted to consume a world in the Kepler sector. Within hours, the ships began showing signs of system failure. The molecular poison had disrupted their conversion processes, causing waste buildup faster than they could purge it. The fleet retreated, leaving the planet behind. "It works," Dr. Kim reported with barely contained excitement. "The devourers cannot adapt fast enough because the poison is chemically similar to what they normally consume. By the time they realize something is wrong, they have already ingested lethal amounts." The success spread rapidly. Hundreds of worlds were treated with the molecular poison. The devourers' advance slowed as they encountered more and more indigestible planets. Their growth rate, which had been exponential, leveled off and began to decline. But the devourers were not done adapting. Intelligence reports indicated they were changing strategies. Instead of consuming dead worlds to build more ships, they were now targeting populated worlds specifically. They needed living biomass for some new purpose. The answer came in the form of a horrifying discovery. The devourers were harvesting sentient beings and incorporating their neural structures into new command ships. They were stealing intelligence from their prey and using it to create smarter, more adaptable leaders. "They are learning from us," James said, his voice hollow. "Every species they capture, every mind they harvest makes them more dangerous. They are becoming not just a swarm, but a true collective intelligence built from thousands of different perspectives." The war against the devourers had been raging for 8 months when the breakthrough came. Not from the Council's advanced laboratories or ancient archives, but from an unexpected source. A human child. 12-year-old Kenji Tanaka was the son of 2 xenobiologists stationed on the Council research vessel Discovery. Like many children of the scientific community, he had grown up surrounded by alien species and advanced technology. He spent his free time reading the research reports his parents left lying around, even though most of it went over his head. One evening, while his parents were analyzing devourer tissue samples, Kenji asked a simple question. Why do the devourers want to eat everything? His mother, Dr. Yuki Tanaka, answered absently while peering into a microscope. Because they were programmed to consume and reproduce. It is what they were designed to do. But why would anyone design something like that? We do not know. The species that created them disappeared millions of years ago. Kenji thought about this for a moment. What if they did not disappear? What if the devourers ate them? Both parents stopped working and looked at their son. His father, Dr. Robert Chen, spoke carefully. That is a possibility we have considered. Why do you ask? Well, if I made a robot to clean my room, I would make it so I could turn it off when it was done. Otherwise, it would just keep cleaning forever. Maybe the devourers have an off switch too, but the people who made it got eaten before they could use it. The simple logic of a child's observation hit both scientists like a thunderbolt. They had been so focused on finding ways to destroy or disable the devourers that they had never considered the possibility of a built-in failsafe. Any species advanced enough to create the devourers would have included some method of control. Within hours, Dr. Rodriguez received a communication from the Discovery outlining this new theory. He immediately assembled a team of xenoarchaeologists, cryptographers, and systems analysts. If the devourers had a failsafe, it would be encoded somewhere in their biology or perhaps in the ruins of their creator's civilization. The search led them to the edge of known space, following a trail of dead worlds that marked the devourers' original path into the galaxy millions of years ago. There, in a system so old that its star had begun dying, they found it. A structure floating in the void, ancient beyond measure, its technology so advanced that it made council science look primitive. The structure was a control station. Its purpose was clear once they accessed its dormant systems. It was designed to command the Devourers, to direct their consumption and, if necessary, to shut them down completely. But the station had been damaged, possibly deliberately. Someone or something had tried to destroy it, and had nearly succeeded. The station is barely functional, reported the chief engineer examining its systems. Most of the primary control pathways are destroyed. The shutdown command is still there, buried in the core programming, but we cannot access it through normal channels. Dr. Rodriguez studied the alien technology, his mind racing. Can we repair it? Not with anything we have. This technology is millions of years more advanced than ours. We would need decades just to understand how it works, let alone fix it. Then we do not repair it. We bypass it. Humans have been bypassing security systems and accessing locked programs since we invented computers. This is just a much bigger computer. The next 3 weeks were spent in intense collaboration. Human hackers worked alongside council cryptographers. Engineers from a dozen species contributed their understanding of different technological paradigms. Slowly, painfully, they began to map the station's systems and find pathways through the damage. The breakthrough came when they stopped trying to understand the technology and started treating it like any other locked system. They found backdoors and workarounds. They rerouted power through auxiliary systems. They essentially jury-rigged a connection to the shutdown command using spare parts, creative thinking, and sheer stubborn determination. It is the ugliest hack I have ever seen, declared the human programmer who had spearheaded the effort. We are routing the command through 17 different subsystems, 3 of which were never designed to talk to each other. There is a better than even chance this will not work at all. And if it does work? Asked Admiral Okoye, who had arrived with a battle fleet to protect the operation. Then every devourer in the galaxy receives a shutdown command simultaneously. Their biology is hard-coded to obey. They will enter a dormant state immediately. How long will they stay dormant? Forever, theoretically. The command essentially tells them the harvest is complete and they can rest. Without another activation signal, they should remain inert indefinitely. Should. Theoretically. You humans and your uncertain certainty. Welcome to the cutting edge of science, Admiral. We are making this up as we go, using tools we barely understand to solve a problem that should not be possible to solve. But we are going to try anyway because that is what humans do. The decision was made to attempt the shutdown. Every available ship was moved into position around the control station to protect it during the crucial moments when the command would be transmitted. The Devourers, sensing something significant was happening, began converging on the location. It became a race against time. Captain Marcus Webb and his task force arrived with Jack Thor's Vraxian fleet. The Kryn sent their most decorated warrior cohorts. The Tharsi, remembering their salvation at human hands, sent every ship they could spare. Even species that had been neutral in the conflict arrived to support the attempt. The final battle was the largest engagement in galactic history. Thousands of ships from hundreds of species faced off against the full might of the Devourer swarm. The fighting was desperate and brutal. Ships on both sides were lost by the dozens, then by the hundreds. But the Allied fleet held the line, buying time for the station crew to complete their work. Inside the control station, Dr. Rodriguez made the final connection. His hands shook as he initialized the sequence. Years of work, months of war, millions of lives lost all came down to this moment, to a jury-rigged hack of ancient alien technology by a species that had barely learned to leave their own planet. Transmitting shutdown command now, he announced. For a long moment, nothing happened. The battle continued to rage outside. More ships fell to Devourer weapons. It seemed like the attempt had failed. Then across the entire battlefield, every Devourer ship stopped moving simultaneously. Their weapons went silent. Their drives cut out. They began to drift like dead hulks in space, their organic hulls going dormant, their systems shutting down into hibernation. The Allied fleet held their fire, hardly daring to believe what they were seeing. In every system where Devourers were active, the same thing was happening. The swarm that had threatened to consume the galaxy had simply turned off, like a machine receiving its deactivation code. The silence on the communications channels lasted for several seconds. Then someone started cheering. Within moments, every ship in the fleet was celebrating. They had done the impossible. They had stopped the Devourers. Admiral Okoye's voice cut through the celebration. All ships maintain alert status. We do not know if this is permanent. Science teams begin analysis of the dormant Devourer vessels. Let us make sure they stay asleep. Over the following days, the scale of the victory became clear. Every Devourer in the galaxy had received the shutdown command. Millions of ships, from the largest capital vessels to the smallest fighters, were now floating dormant. The threat that had nearly destroyed galactic civilization 3,000 years ago had been neutralized by a combination of ancient technology and human ingenuity. The Galactic Council convened for a special session to address the aftermath of the war. The chamber was packed with representatives eager to understand how the newcomer species had accomplished what the Council's greatest minds had thought impossible. Ambassador Sarah Chen stood before them once more, but this time the atmosphere was entirely different. There was no mockery, no dismissal, only respect and, in some cases, awe. Members of the Council, she began. 8 months ago, humanity was the species you doubted. We were too weak, too primitive, too divided to contribute meaningfully to galactic civilization. Some of you voted for our membership reluctantly. Some of you opposed it entirely. Today I stand before you not to gloat or claim superiority, but to remind you of something important. She paused, letting her words carry across the vast chamber. Humans did not defeat the Devourers alone. We provided ideas, creativity, and determination. But it was the Tharsi who held their ground during the evacuation. It was the Vraxians who adapted their tactics to support our strategies. It was the Kryn who embraced asymmetric warfare. It was the Luminari who helped us understand the ethical implications of our weapons. It was the combined knowledge of dozens of species that made the final breakthrough possible. The lesson of this war is not that humans are superior. It is that diversity makes us stronger. Our different perspectives, our varied approaches, our unique experiences all contribute to our collective ability to solve problems. The Council has spent millions of years developing protocols and procedures that worked well against conventional threats. The Devourers were not conventional. They required